We're down the Gold Coast today on one of our large multi-stage development sites. This one is approximately 340 hectares in size, constructing 3,500 lots here over the next 15 years. Today we're going to be looking at some of the erosion sediment control measures that we've got in place to manage a project of this scale. For a site this size, we've got several erosion sediment control plans. For every new stage, a new plan is produced, and Patricia and her ESC crew manage all the implementation of the controls that are required as per the ESC plan. So the ESC plan is very important and details everything that you need to have in place through every stage of the project. We've got the site outlined here with the stage 1. We're down in the sales office here. Stage 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 will be visiting all these areas today and pointing out features. We've got the site drainage profile, changing the drainage profile as the site develops. So here the road boxes are formed and we're getting drainage through the road boxes off the lots, directed to sediment basins. We've got stabilised batters occurring. As the site develops, we've got more stabilisation occurring, still runoff being directed through the road boxes to the sediment basins. And we've got a series of calculations which describe how big each feature should be. So we've got sediment basin calculations, we've got spillway calculations, all the sizing. It's all there in the plan. So here we have one of the main access tracks through the site. It actually goes across a waterway. So we've established these roadside drains. The drains are lined with geofabric and rock checks, and the road is cambered, so all the water that runs off the road drains towards that stabilised drain. So I'm standing in front of a high efficiency sediment basin, or a HES basin. So this is one of our methods of treating site runoff. It's got several features which I'll point out shortly, but basically the water enters the basin, is treated with a flocculant, and as the water moves through the basin, the water becomes clean and we can discharge clean water out through the spillway. So this catchment is about 13 hectares in size. So the construction site runoff from that catchment flows into a dirty water drain. This particular dirty water drain is lined with rubber. And the reason it's lined with rubber is because the rocky porous material underneath doesn't convey the water very well. So we've got a rubber lining transporting all that catchment, all that 13 hectares of runoff into a single inflow point here, or the inlet to the basin. The water flows through the pipe, and at the end of the pipe there is a sensor which is reading the depth of flow, and that information is used by the dosing unit to discharge a flocculant or a coagulant into the flow, and as it enters the basin it gets mixed in the forebay, and the water moves through the basin over the level spreader in a uniform flow. And as it moves through the basin, the clay particles settle out through gravity and the clean water remains at the top of the basin to discharge out through the spillway. So one of the main features of the HES basin is the dosing unit. So the dosing unit is where the flocculant gets added to the flow of water that's coming into the basin. So the runoff from the site is entering through a single inflow point, and that's where the flocculant is added into the flow of water. So this is the inlet to the basin. The single inflow point for that whole catchment flows to here. It's approximately 6 meters long, and at the end of that pipe there is the sensor that's reading the flow. So when a flow of water comes through the pipe, the sensor reads the depth and sends that information to the dosing unit, which then doses the flocculant according to the amount of flow that's coming through the pipe. So this is the outlet to the HES basin. This is designed as per the ESC plan, so the rock size, the size of the spillway, everything's been designed according to the ESC plan. It's very important to have a stabilized outlet of the basin, so when the water overflows, it's not going to cause further sediment release to the creek, which is right here. So it's a really well constructed spillway, and the rock sourced from on site here as well. We're at another HES basin here, smaller version to what you've seen already, but the same principles. We have a single inflow point, we have the dosing unit with the flocculant and the coagulant, we've got drainage all directed to the pipe, the sensor attached to the pipe, and clean water in the basin. So behind me here you can see large-scale bulk earthworks occurring, quite a substantial amount of open ground. I guess the key feature here is that there's a couple of sediment basins in place, and they were the first things to be installed in this stage of works. So the sediment basins were created before any of the major disturbance occurred, and the dirty water drains you can see are surrounding the disturbed area, directing all the water from a particular catchment to the inlet of the basin. The site constraints in this scenario don't allow for a traditional sort of shaped basin. We just had to fit in with the landscape, and as you can see, the water quality is very good. The stabilised batters, spillway, single inflow point, all the features of a standard HES basin. So here you can see a type E basin, so it's a combination of type B and type D. So the traditional capture type D scenario attached to a smaller HES or type B sediment basin. So the benefit of this is that you can keep a large volume of untreated water on site for dust suppression, so you're not wasting money on product as in flocculant or coagulant to treat the water. You can just use the untreated water for dust suppression. All the rock that's used on site here is from the on-site quarry, so we're sourcing all the material for spillways, gravel tracks, road base. It's all created here on site. So here we have some finished lots, well stabilised lots with a really good covering of grass. So to get to this point, at finished surface level, we've spread topsoil out. The topsoil gets ameliorated with some agricultural lime and some fertiliser to promote that grass growth. There's a couple of other methods to add the seed. You can either hydromulch or drill seed. Both are effective. These particular lots here have been hydromulched, so you can see we've had a really good success rate with the grass strike and a good covering of grass. Once the drill seeding or the hydromulch has been completed, it's really important to be able to water the lots and promote that vegetation growth. So watering is a key component of achieving the good grass strike. So just on the edge of the site here, and you can see the batter, it's completely stabilised. This is a finished batter. We've got a layer of topsoil covered in some mulch, and then the jute net placed on top to hold everything together, and then it's planted out with a variety of native species, shrubs and trees. And in the distance you can see the batter that is not quite finished to permanent yet. It's got the mulch down, there's still some works occurring, so you can see a nice transition between finished and almost finished. Thanks for joining me on site today. I really hope it was a valuable learning experience. We've seen a lot of good erosion and sediment control measures installed on site. It's important to note, however, that these measures should be maintained and monitored so that they perform the job that they're supposed to do right throughout the life of the development. This is particularly important before a rain event, sometimes during a rain event, and even after a rain event. The erosion and sediment control plan should also be updated as things change on site. For more information, head to the Water by Design website, where you can find a range of free resources to help you implement best practice ESC on your site.